Good evening. This is our closing evening of another Portland closed class. And of course, my first word is one of thanks and appreciation to those workers in the center who have made this class so smooth, so enjoyable. It has been a great privilege to work here this week and to find everything in such apple pie order and with Mrs. Clow away, because this is the greatest evidence of devotion that the students can give. And of course it represents a deep appreciation of our work too. And so for myself and for all of the students here, thanks to those of you in the back. And then to the students who have been through this classwork. The smallest part of classwork is hearing the word. The biggest part is the practice of it, the living of it. And that the students have to do themselves. No message of truth in and of itself can save the world. If it could, the message of Lao Tzu of China would have saved it. It has in it everything necessary to save a world. The original message of Gautama the Buddha was sufficient to save 7 worlds. And that which is left to us in the 4 Gospels by the Master Christ Jesus could save all the worlds that exist here and in the skies. If messages in and of themselves could do it, but they can't. It is what an individual does with a message that determines what it will do in his or her life, just as it is what a group of students will do that determines what the message will do in their particular center or community or city. We are told that if there were 10 righteous men in a city, the city would be saved. If there were 10 students in any of the truth centers in the world, that center would be a shining light for all the rest of the nation to see. So it is that no one can benefit by any message, but everyone can benefit by every message, because of the messages that have been given to this world by serious spiritual lights. There is enough in any of those to save the world, to save an individual's world. There isn't a spiritual teaching that has been given to the world by a great leader that hasn't within itself enough for any of us to lift ourselves into heaven. I'm afraid that we sometimes see students waste too much time with those messages that have been brought here by those who never have had a message, by those who have never been seriously engaged in the work. And a great deal of time can be lost that way, and a lot of effort can be wasted. But no one that ever comes to a place of this kind need ever have any doubt about the rightness of a message, because everyone has the right to investigate who brought it here and what has it accomplished since it's been here. So again, it's a matter of individual responsibility as to what happens when a class comes to what appears to be its end, like tonight. Of course, it really isn't the end. To those students who know what constitutes a message of truth, a class is a continuing experience lasting forever, because a word of truth, just a single idea or message that is received in fertile soil, takes root and grows, and from that little seed becomes an entire forest. There, of course, the Master showed us why there are some of us who go further than others. He made that very clear, that the seed falls sometimes in rocky soil. And it won't go far, nor bring forth any fruit. Barren soil, and it brings forth nothing. Fertile soil, and it sprouts up within us. Very often the messages are blamed for a student's lack of response. No, if it's a message of one of those who are spiritually endowed, then it isn't the message's fault. It is the fault of the student who permits himself or herself to remain rocky soil or barren soil. Perhaps in the beginning most of us were rocky and barren, but we don't have to remain that way. It is a question only of our determination to continue in the study, in the practice, in the meditation, until such time as the soil changes its nature. Anyone who is led to a spiritual message has the capacity to develop the soil of their consciousness and make it receptive to truth and responsive to truth. True it is that it sometimes requires years of devotion, of study, in the face of what outwardly seemed to be no progress. For the benefit of some, if there are any here, who are slow in making spiritual progress, it might console you to know that I worked and studied for 13 years and made no progress, but absolutely none that was visible in the external world, not even visible to me. In my 13th year of study, I would have said to you, I am the world's most colossal failure, for I've read these books and worked on them for 13 years, and I'm exactly where I was 13 years ago, except for one thing: I know less than I knew then. And that's exactly what happened to me. But it wasn't a week or two after that my entire life was changed by a spiritual experience. And within 2 days after that, I was healing. But 1 week before, had you spoken to me, I would have said, there's no hope for me. I'm the barren soil and the rocky soil all mixed up together. Not a trace of fertility in it. But you see, there was, but it was invisible to the outer senses, and it was invisible to me. I could mark no progress within me. And yet, in that 1 second, in that one moment of illumination, the 13 years were wiped out, and life began anew. And so it is that it does take. You might ask why I continued 13 years that way. Well, my need was desperate. My need was very desperate. I didn't need physical healing or mental or moral or financial. Not that I was an angel, but I wasn't any worse than the average. But I had no specific problems. But I had a heart hunger. I was lonesome. I had friends and I had relatives and a sufficiency of money and success and business, but I was lonesome, and I was lonesome for that one companion, without which all of us are barren, even if we have loads of friends and relatives and lots of money and homes and yachts. We still are lonesome without that one thing. Now, there are people so constituted that they can get along beautifully without God. Just give them a few friends and a few dollars and whatever they need externally, and they'll never miss God in this whole incarnation. But I wasn't one of that type. I had the outer things, but I longed for the inner. And evidently there was going to be no rest for me till I found it, and it took 13 years. So then, if you have that longing, not for demonstration, not for better health or more wealth, but if you have that longing for that inner glow, that inner companionship, that inner feeling that there must be something more to this world than what meets the eyes, ears, and taste, touch, and smell. There must be a transcendental something. And there are people who have met it. If you have read Browning or Whittier or Whitman, Emerson, then you know what I mean. There is always a something beyond the reach of the human mind. We, of course, do not know how to reach out for it except through the human mind. And so the human mind can be an instrument through which we read the words, hear the words, ponder them, meditate upon them, until the words go deeper than the mind into that fertile soil, that which we call consciousness or God. You have to break through the mind to reach it. The mind, if you just dwell in that realm, as Paul tells us, with the letter, it killeth. But if you can penetrate through the layer of mind into the soul or consciousness, there you will find the response. You will find that we have faculties far beyond the faculties of mind. You will find that we have faculties that eliminate the need for memory, the need for reasoning powers. Just like the mathematician jumps to 12 times 12 is 144 without reasoning it out or taking thought about it, it just jumps there automatically through knowledge. I've told the story of a man that we had in Massachusetts who used to, just for pleasure, a banker, who would sit in the board of directors room where they had their big electric mathematical machines, and they would put all kinds of problems on this machine way up into the 6 and 7 figures, and before the machine electrically could put down the answer, he told it to him out of his mouth. He needed no reasoning process. As fast as they could reel off the problem, he saw the answer. And of course he didn't see it with his eyes. He knew it, and it came right out of his mouth. And so it is. There is an intuitive faculty, and it operates on two levels, on the cosmic level and on the spiritual level. Swedenborg had it on the cosmic level, and therefore he was able to sit in a room here and know that a building was on fire in a city 500 miles away, and which building it was and how many people were hurt. That is operating on the cosmic level, because you know of things that are taking place in the cosmos, in this world. When it operates on the spiritual level, you're not reading minds, you're not seeing pictures of human things, but you are receiving divine impartations of universal, immortal, spiritual truths. The seers, the saints, the mystics, they have the inner vision that enables them to bring forth these great wisdoms which are heretofore unknown to man, and they bring it out of a depth that we call consciousness or soul. By making a way for it, it flows into their conscious awareness, and they can express it. Job gave us one of those when he said, "He hangeth the earth on nothing." Where would Job get the knowledge that God hangeth the earth on nothing? Because there was nothing anywhere written like that, nothing anywhere spoken like that, nothing anywhere known, and yet we know now that it is one of the most profound truths ever given to man, because it means that in the spiritual realm no one thing is dependent upon another. In other words, when you're doing spiritual healing, it isn't even dependent on your knowing a truth. It is merely dependent on an absolute silence and stillness into which rushes something out of God. We call it a spirit, or the Christ, and it doeth the works. At our stage of development, we lead up to that place of nothingness by our meditations or contemplative meditations, in which we contemplate God and the things of God. We lead ourselves up to that point of nothingness. Then when we get there and we are suspended in nothingness, where we have no thoughts, no feelings, no reactions to anything, we're just a blank, then into that rushes this deep breath or a statement of truth, and something of a ponderous nature comes forth. I know that some of you were in Chicago when an experience like that took place recently. In the midst of our class, I was talking just like this to the students, when all of a sudden a voice inside of me said, "5th chapter of Matthew, bottom of the page." And then I turned around and said, "No, it's no use. I know what's there and I don't understand it." And the voice came right back again, "5th chapter of Matthew, bottom of the page." Well, all right, if you insist. So I opened this little Bible, and there I found that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, resist not evil. And in that blinding flash, I caught the whole secret of the Sermon on the Mount, something I've never known in my life, something you've never heard me teach, something you've never heard me expound, something you've never heard me answer a question on, because I never knew it, and I never answer questions on anything that I don't know by revelation. I could look them up in books and see what others said about them, but I don't teach from what others teach. I teach it only after God has revealed it to me, and so I've left the subject of the Sermon on the Mount alone until that Chicago class when it hit me. And then I knew you are under the law while you're taking advantage of that eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. As long as you're resisting evil, as long as you are using the weapons of the world, you're under the law. And the very knife that you throw at somebody will come right back to pierce you in the chest. And all that in a blinding flash out of nowhere. So that from then on I have been teaching this subject of the Sermon on the Mount, just as you have had it in this class, that you're under the law while you're indulging the human way of life, and there's no way of expecting grace while you're doing it. You can pray for it from now for 1,000,000 years. It isn't going to come to you. You're only going to have grace when you give up the weapons of the world, when you give up using its means and come to Job's understanding of he hangeth the world on nothing. And then if you just stand there in that nothingness, the Spirit rushes in to pick you up and carry you through. Now, it is just in exactly that way that truth is born. It is just in that way that all unfoldments come from within. It was back in about 1935 when I was sitting at my desk one day, and the same voice said, "Mind is not God." And you'll never know what a shock that was, because all of the metaphysical teachings of the world teach that mind is God. And here is a statement that contradicts every metaphysical teaching that is known to man today. It was quite a shock to receive it. But as I sat listening, I knew it would explain itself. It followed up with, mind is an avenue of awareness. God is the creative principle. Spirit is the creative principle. Spirit is the power. Mind is only an avenue of awareness. It has no creative activity. It has no action of its own. It has no function except through it you become aware of that which is. And so all of our work has been based on that very fact, that the creations of mind are not truth. The creations of mind are these counterfeits, these substanceless creations. But when you go beyond mind into consciousness, then comes the truth. It was in that same way, I've just told you of those 13 years of longing. Then after that came the period of healing. But during those years of healing, there came the longing to know why we have to do healing, why there is error on earth, what causes it, what produces it. And we learned enough to know that error isn't real no matter what form it assumes. We know enough to call it nothingness. We know enough to call it mortal mind or nothingness. We know enough to call it an illusion or an unreal thing. But that isn't really knowing its cause or its basis. That is merely removing it from the realm of the real without being able to understand it. And so my next longing was to know what lies behind mortal mind. Where does a mortal mind come from? Or what constitutes mortal mind? What could you do to get rid of mortal mind? How would you overcome mortal mind? What are you going to do about it? Even if it's nothingness, you know, it's very annoying to all of us. With all of the nothingness of mortal mind, we're all here because mortal mind drove us here. And don't get discouraged. I had to wait 25 years for the answer to that one. 25 years of praying, 25 years of meditating on it, 25 years of sometimes tearing my heart out and getting no answer. And then, in a moment that I had no idea at all that it was going to come, when I wasn't expecting it, it flashed into my mind like a lightning bolt and nearly threw me off the platform. It shook me from head to foot. For weeks I didn't get over the shaking that I got from the intensity of that revelation that the cause of all the trouble on the face of the earth is the belief in good and evil. That nobody can stay in the Garden of Eden, of harmony, of perfection, while they are accepting in their mind the belief of good and evil. But everybody can go back into Eden and be pure and have lived by grace, not by the sweat of the brow, by grace, by the gift of God, just by giving up the belief of good and evil, just by being willing to concede there's no good man on earth and no bad one, no good woman on earth, no bad one, no good child on earth, no bad one. There is neither good nor bad. Thinking would make it so. Yes, you can decide that this is good and the other one can decide that is good. You can decide this is evil and the other one can decide that is evil. But if you once withdraw your estimate, your opinion, your concept, and declare that in all of heaven and earth nothing is good or evil, only God itself, the invisible, is the all-good. Nothing visible, nothing that you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell is good, nor is it evil, nor has it any qualities like such. Only the invisible is good, and that invisible, permeates the visible and gives it its qualities. In other words, to say that a rose garden is beautiful is true. To say it's good is untrue, because the good is the invisible presence and power that formed it. That's the good. And the visible merely reflects that goodness. But it's the invisible nature that is the good. And so it is. Out of that nothingness, no human thought, no human reasoning, just what had evidently become a blank, into that rushed this wisdom, hidden 4,000 years from the world, now revealed again. A wisdom that could change your life inside of 30 days if you could accept it. Inside of 30 days, your whole life could be changed if you could have the strength to withhold all judgments as to good and evil and realize, I will not know good or evil. I will know only God as good. And then let this world be whatever it wants to be or appears to be to the world. But for you, never again judging good or evil. Well, it is in that way then that we learn there is a kingdom or a realm beyond the physical, beyond the mental, beyond the cosmic. And that is the world of spirit that enabled the Master to say, I have overcome the world. In other words, I have overcome things and thoughts. I get to that place where by taking thought I cannot add 1 cubit to my stature, but by leaning back into that nothingness, the Spirit presents itself in whatever form and as whatever form may be necessary. You see then that there must be fertile soil to receive these truths. There must be fertile soil in order to receive harmony into your experience. But since you are, as I am, human and full of the human frailties of life, it becomes as necessary for you as for me to do a little cultivating of our soil through study, through meditation, through mingling with those that are on our own path of life. In that way, our consciousness deepens and ripens and brings forth fruit after its own kind. And the question here, cosmic law is a law of love, as I understand it. Do you consider cause and effect cosmic law? Yes. Cause and effect is cosmic law. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. That's cause and effect. That's cosmic law. The entire teaching of the Master was to show you what cosmic law is and then how to surmount it. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. But there is one way to rise above the law of cause and effect, and that is not to have a cause. Do nothing, think nothing, be nothing of yourself. Let the Spirit bear witness with your spirit. If you pray and have some object of prayer, you're apt to bring forth fruit after that kind. You're apt to have an effect in accord with the cause which you're setting up. But if you were to pray without an object, if your prayer would only be for the realization of God, then you would find you've not set up a cause and there'll be no effect. There'll only be God itself appearing as the harmony of your existence. So it is in every way. If you do not take up the weapons of defense on your own behalf, you can't be injured by those weapons. If you do not mete out justice according to human standards, then human justice cannot come back at you. For whatever it is that you bind, that's what's bound. Whatever you loose, that's what's loosed. You are the one who determines, and when you relinquish the thoughts and things of this world, the desires, and live in a continuous desire to know God, whom to know aright is life eternal, to live in that consciousness of wanting to know and experience God, leaving all other considerations aside, then when God is realized, God appears in your experience as the perfections of life, the perfectness, the harmony, the wholeness, and the completeness. In that regard, the question comes up about this thing called mortal mind and immortal mind. Of course, there are not two minds, nor are there two powers. It is only while we are beholding good and evil that there are two powers, a good power and an evil power. And in the old religions, they call that God and Satan. In the metaphysical, they call it immortal and mortal. In philosophy, they call it good and evil. But as a matter of fact, there are no such powers except to Adam after the Garden of Eden, when he began to know both good and evil. Then he had two powers. But the person who gives up both good and evil has no powers. None whatsoever, and they have no need of powers. They have God. When one has God, one needs no powers. You see, the error of the human world is that it has two powers. You'll find this all through the Infinite Way writings. It has two powers. It has a constructive power and a destructive one. It has a conscious mind and a subconscious one, and lately a superconscious one. It has God and devil, good and evil. And all of that is predicated on one thing, the acceptance that there is good and evil. Now what becomes of God and devil, good and evil, immortal and mortal, when you no longer have good or evil? Now they all disappear out the window and you're left with nothing but God. Isn't that terrible? Just left with God. I feel like an evangelist. I could say, praise be. And that's what happens. That's what happens if you begin in a small way. If you have a little bird at home, or even a goldfish, that doesn't seem to be so well, start with it and begin to know that there's no such thing as good birds or bad birds, or good fish or bad fish, or live ones or dead ones. There's only birds and fish. And pretty soon you'll find divine harmony. When you have seen it in those lesser aspects, begin on the bigger ones. Don't try it on your own children until toward the last. It isn't easy to agree that they're not good. They are angels, but after a while they aren't really. They aren't the angels that parents think they are, and they're not the devils that the neighbors think they are. You see, both of that is fiction. But you do get to see that they are neither good nor evil, but God constitutes their being. God constitutes their soul, their life, their reality. And then is when you begin to perceive the miracle of having neither good nor evil, of having overcome good nor evil. Then you'll really find how quickly you'll be able to say, I have overcome the world. Because none of the world to me is good or bad. It's just a world. Sometimes beautiful, and sometimes tasty, and sometimes useful, whatever the thing may be, sometimes companionable, but neither good nor evil. Since my good is God. God is my good. God is my good. God alone is my good. God is my supply. God is my high tower, my fortress, my resting place. God is my home, my consciousness. God is my all in all, and besides God there is none else. Watch that miracle that takes place. And then the question, what is the actual state of man immediately following the change called death? There is no one state. If a man is immortal, when he passes beyond, he is still immortal. Death never made a mortal into an immortal. Otherwise, death would be man's best friend. But Scripture says that death is an enemy that must be overcome. Now, the spiritually enlightened never know death. They never experience death. Their passing from this stage isn't death. It's an awakening into a higher state of consciousness. It's only a mortal who knows death, and his death is only a temporary one, for he wakes up again another mortal. He has certainly all of the opportunities for becoming an immortal as he has here. That hasn't changed. But the mere act of death hasn't changed him, except in the case of those who are on this spiritual path. Now, it makes no difference if you haven't outwardly seemed to have made good progress, because you're no more in a position to judge your progress today than I was a week before the experience happened. But if you are on this path, if you are filling your consciousness with as much of truth as you can, you will find then that if you should pass, that it will be as if you had made 1,000 years progress, and just by the act of passing. All those, and I've witnessed that, so I'm not speaking again from hearsay, I'm telling you from actual experience what I've witnessed, those on the spiritual path immediately make the equivalent of 1,000 years progress on passing. Not by jumping out of windows, however, to get there, but those who pass from what we would call natural causes that are on the upward path instantly throw aside even the mortal shell that others carry with them across the border, and are freed. But those who are on the mortal level, they waken on the mortal level, and they have to then go through the same growing process as we have been going through here. I have seen those who have left this plane sometimes within a few hours and sometimes within a day or two after they've left. And I've seen how they were clothed, and I've seen how they spoke. And then I've seen those who are on the spiritual path, and I've seen the transformation in them. And the transformation is something that is beyond our imagination. And that is only because in this study and meditation, in the study and meditation of truth. There is a refining process going on. There is a falling away of those veils of spiritual ignorance. And even if you cannot fully perceive the benefit of them in your daily life, they're there just the same. Let us rest a few minutes. This has to do with the practical application of what I said about having neither good nor evil. Everything that you see, hear, taste, touch, or smell exists as an effect. And the moment you perceive that there is neither good nor evil in that effect, you lose your fear of it. You can't fear something that has no effect any more than you fear a glass of pure water. As a matter of fact, you not only can't fear a glass of pure water, you can't even love it. You can enjoy it and benefit by it, but there's nobody yet ever fell in love with a glass of water, nor hated it, nor feared it. You just take it as it is for what it is, a glass of water. Now the Master felt that same way about leprosy. He didn't hate it and he didn't fear it, he certainly didn't love it, but he went up and touched it and showed by that he had risen above the belief of good and evil. He knew leprosy wasn't good, but he also saw that it wasn't evil, that it had no power. So we have to do with every form of sin and disease that appears before our gaze. We have to be able to look at it and say, never again can I fear you. Never again can I hate you. There is no power in that which is seen, heard, tasted, touched, or smelled. That doesn't mean that it isn't useful. Water is useful, food is useful, electricity is useful. Loads of things are useful, many things are beautiful, loads of things are harmonious and joyful, but none of them have a power for good or evil, except such power as thinking makes it so. Now, when you agree not to think that it is good or evil, you will find it has no power. When it has no power for good or evil, then you'll find that divine harmony establishes itself in your experience. So it is. The principle is that you are suffering from those things that you hate, fear, or overly love. And when you no longer hate them, fear them, or love them, but treat them as they should be treated, as a part of this universe, and each thing serving its purpose, then you will find that in one way or another, those things that should not be a part of your experience will be withdrawn from you. Those things necessary to your unfoldment will be provided for you. Then you have to watch yourself that after they're provided, you don't go around thinking they're good. They're not good, but they're useful or beautiful, enjoyable, and so forth. Now, practice this principle in just that way. You can look around at your rooms, look around your home, look into your gardens, and begin to agree that whereas these may be beautiful and useful, they have no powers of good or evil within them. All power is in God. Only the invisible is good. Only the invisible If it's visible, it's neither good nor bad, but sometimes useful, practical, beautiful, joyful, and so forth and so on. This changes the entire nature of one's life. A person who realized that there's nothing good or evil couldn't steal, nor could they lie for anything or cheat for anything, because there wouldn't be anything have that much value to them if it's neither good nor evil. If all the good is in the invisible, one would then abide in the invisible and let the invisible flow out into the visible. All right, let's rest again. Now this is the most difficult part of spiritual living in the beginning, but it is the most beautiful part when the realization dawns. Everyone whom I've ever met has come to whatever metaphysical teaching they came to for some purpose. And that is as much as to say that we are going to God, to truth, for some purpose. Some are going there for health. Some are going there for supply. Some are going there for companionship. Some are going for employment. Now I say to you that in a spiritual teaching, that is a mistake that may keep you out of the kingdom of heaven. Going to God for any purpose is in itself sufficient to keep you from finding God. God is not a servant acting to do something for us or give something to us or produce something for us. God is not a tool or an instrument. God is itself our life, our wholeness, and our completeness. And until a person has seen that clearly enough to want God alone for the sake of God and for no other object of purpose, not for the attaining of anything, until then they cannot achieve God. They're thinking of God only in terms of a servant. You tell your servant what you want, and your servant goes and gets it for you. There are some types of metaphysical teaching like that. You tell the divine mind what you want and when you want it, and insist that it do it today too. That makes of God a tool. It makes God your servant instead of you being God's servant. Instead of we being an instrument through which God can manifest, we decide to be the great I am and have God go around doing our errands for us and being rebuked if it's not done on time. There's no such God, you know. There's none. That's fiction. There's no such God. Nobody ever made a success of trying to use God for a tool. For a while, some people have made demonstrations that way and been awfully sorry for it later. The reaction is worse than the action. We have no right to begin with to determine what it is that we want or that we need. Who made us so much wiser than God that we should know these things? We should go to God, first of all, to learn what things we have need of. We should go to God, first of all, for guidance in knowing what to pray for. We know not what to pray for, how to go out or how to come in. So we let the Spirit make intercession with our spirit, and we let God pray in us. Now, when you change your relationship to God so that God is not your servant, God is not supposed to obey your desires, your wishes, your will, but turn around and let God be the divine will, the divine intelligence, and the divine love, and let us be willing instruments of God. Let us be servants of God. That's the lesson of the Master washing the disciples' feet. Too many people in this world aspire to be spiritual masters, not realizing that if they ever achieve it, they'll be the servant of everybody who needs anything on the face of the globe. They'll be at the beck and call of everybody that has a headache or a toe ache or needs a position, and the more of a master they become, the more of a servant they're going to become, and more at the beck and call of everybody that wants to call. So be prepared for that. Should you get to be a master, don't be surprised. It's a terrible price at first when you realize that you have become mankind's servant. It's a glorious kind of servant when you get there. But the point is, change your relationship with God right now. If you have left in you any sense at all that God is supposed to do your bidding or fulfill your desires or heed your prayers, don't have that kind of a God. Make yourself nothing and let God decide what you need and when you need it. Let God decide how and when to bring you to spiritual fruitage, and always turn within with that listening ear, remembering, speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Not thy boss that's telling you what to do, not the master who knows more than you do. Thy servant heareth. And then you watch the difference that comes into your life when you let the impartations come from the Spirit to you, instead of you talking up to the Spirit. It's an important point, this one, of our relationship with God, because I know that we haven't the right idea of it. I know that most of us are far off in our understanding of the nature of God. And we still believe that we can pray to God, or someone can pray to God for us, and God will do our bidding. There is no such God. I know it now. I know it now. I know it's no use to ask for anything. I know it's no use to tell God. I know it's no use to have a desire. It's no use. There isn't anybody paying attention to what I want. God is fulfilling itself. If I can be still enough, I receive God's grace in the form of every harmony necessary in my experience. And when I'm not receiving those harmonies, it isn't God's fault. In some way, I have forgotten God's true relationship to me and my true relationship to God. I don't think there's a better note to close on than that. And so, we say in Hawaii, until we meet again, aloha.